Well, welcome back. Welcome anew to the Further Faster podcast. I'm Joseph McClendon III, and I will be your host and your guide, and maybe even your mentor today on this journey to do exactly what the name implies, and that is to assist you in going further, faster, and becoming more wealthy. And around here, of course, wealthy means to be healthy, happy, and financially abundant. And we are always going to talk about one of those, but today we're going to actually talk about two. As a matter of fact, we're going to talk about the two that bring you the most happiness and the most health, if you will. And something so simple that it's simple not to do as well. So you're going to be excited about this. Grab a pad and paper and get ready to get healthy and happy, and I'll be right back. Well, welcome back. Joseph McClendon III here. And I chose to do this podcast today, or this subject today, because something very interesting is happening in my life in about 11 days. And that is that I am going to be 70 years old. I know, right? I can't believe it myself. 70 years on this planet. Now, the reason I share that with you is you've probably figured this out, whatever age you are right now, that any birthday with a 0 or a 5 behind it are the ones that make us think and make us really start to evaluate our lives and all those things. And I'm here to tell you, when you start to get up there in age, you start to do it more and more. Only it's different this year. And it's been different for the last couple of years, but it's really special this year. It causes us to evaluate. It causes us to kind of take a look at things. And for a lot of us, it's quite cathartic and emotional for us that we can't believe we got this far. But the reason why I'm sharing this with you is that I'm not shy about it. As a matter of fact, I'm in front of thousands, literally thousands of people. As a matter of fact, in the last month, my guess is I have told my age to live, not just not just virtual on camera or anything like that, but live events. I've told my age to well over 15,000 people on different continents around the world, because I do live events all over the place. And so when I share that with people, there's always quite a bit of disbelief. Now, at the risk of sounding arrogant, if you're watching me right now, you're probably saying, well, this guy doesn't look 70 years old. And I'm not saying any of this to brag or to boast. I'm just saying that I don't have the energy of a 70-year-old man. And as a matter of fact, my friends that are still around, that I know, look a lot older, act a lot older, and feel a lot older than I do. I, at 35 years old, started to pay attention to my health and my fitness and all of those things and my energy. And I actually took note of it and really made that a marker of how I wanted to feel my whole life. And I know this is going to sound ridiculous because people say it all the time, that I feel like I did when I was 35 years old. Well, I'm here to tell you I do. I have as much energy, if not more, than I did. I certainly have more gray hairs now, and I certainly have, maybe a couple more wrinkles, that kind of thing. But the truth of the matter is I really feel that way. I still sleep maybe 4.5, 5 hours a night. I wake up energized, excited, and I go through my life with a level of happiness that most people don't. Now, again, I'm saying all this not to brag or to boast, and I don't use myself as some shining example of the way that things should be. I do, however, use myself as a shining example of what is possible, because prior to my paying attention to some of the things I'm going to share with you today, prior to this, I was just like everybody else. I would sleep, 8, 9, 10 hours a night and wake up tired. I had aches and pains all throughout my body, and I felt it and I looked it. And now that's no longer the case. So don't worry, this is not going to be a health episode about telling you to eat a certain way and so on and so forth. I'm going to talk to you about something that is, let's just say, known but overlooked by most people as being one of the components, and in my opinion, one of the most important components to your health and your happiness. And I started off by saying this. In 1988, I came home to a voice message on my answering machine. This is before your machine was in the digital on your phone. And the message was that I needed to get to be with my mother, who was 3 hours away. I was living in Los Angeles at the time, and so I needed to get to her because she was in the hospital. Now, they didn't tell me what it was, but they said, you got to get here very quick because it's very, very serious. And I had just returned from one of my certifications in, gosh, I forget which with this one, but at this particular certification, I met the Dr. Deepak Chopra. And Dr. Chopra, in case you don't know who he is, he's one of the, he's one of the OGs, if you will, of helping people rid themselves of terminal diseases without traditional medicine, without medication or traditional medicine. And I met him, and one of the things that he told the group was, he said, and by the way, I'm going to start, I need to say this, that this is not a slide or a slight on doctors, physicians, or anything, because those people are honestly some of the most dedicated people, and they really are out to help people. This is just a second opinion. But what he said was, listen, statistics show that 8 or 9 times out of 10, when a person is told they have a terminal illness, and they're told this much time they have left to live, that person dies on or around that day, 8 or 9 times out of 10. And he said, so if you ever hear somebody say that to you or someone that you love, you tell them, doctor or whomever, I appreciate your diagnosis, but I will not accept your verdict. And so I kind of heard that and kind of, tucked it away, and I thought that was great. But when I got to my mom's hospital, as it turned out, I met the physician, and he had just come out from operating on my mom, just put her back together, if you will, stitch her back up. And he said, unfortunately, my mother had terminal cancer. He said that he took out 2/3 of a grapefruit size tumor in her intestine. He had to leave the rest of it because taking the rest of it out would end her life now, and that she had about 2 months to live. Now, I'm shortening the story for podcast purposes, if you will, but the truth of the matter is it was a devastating blow to me and my sister, who was in the room as well. And but I remembered what Dr. Chopra said. And I said, doctor, I appreciate your diagnosis, but I won't accept your verdict. Please don't tell those words to my mother. And the doctor actually, and he was a very compassionate man, so I'm not, trying to throw him under the bus or anything, but he said, listen, I know how you feel, and I would love to tell you that you could be optimistic about this, but it's too late. I've seen this, 1,000 times, and it's too late. And so, I'm sorry to tell you this. And I said, no, you can tell her she's sick. You can tell her she has cancer, but don't tell her she's going to die. Don't give her that death sentence. And long story short, he and I went back and forth to the point that because he was getting ready to leave, and I actually grabbed him and wouldn't let him leave, and to promise me that he wasn't going to tell me. He kept telling me, no, it's my job. It's my duty to tell her. And I said, no, it's not. I said, it's only God's right to tell her that. It's not yours. And so I literally told him, if he tells her that, I'm going to find him. I'm going to break his back. Now, this guy's much bigger than me, and I'm not a violent person, but that's what came out of me. This is my mom. And so he literally called the police and had me escorted out of the hospital. Now, they didn't rough me up or anything or arrest me. They just said, listen, we understand how you feel, and you can't threaten the doctor. You can come back here when you calm down. In between that time, I remembered that I had also read a book some time ago by a Dr. Norman Cousins. And Dr. Cousins, if you read any of his books, he's got a couple of them, he is very well noted for healing himself and others through laughter. Through laughter. And at the end, by the end of this podcast, you can understand why it's so important. Anyway, I remembered that, okay, wait a minute. And I also remembered about, how to eat, how to think, and all of those things, and take care of, because I've been doing it for myself for a little while. I already started producing results in my own self. But I also know this, that your psychology, your brain is the command center for everything. And your body knows what to do to heal itself. If you cut yourself, you don't have to tell it to heal. It's going to heal on its own. It knows what to do. And as long as you aid it with everything that it needs, the nutrition, and most of all, in my opinion, the thought process, then it's going to do its best to heal. Now, I am going to say this, that I'm not here to say that I know the secret and if you do this, then you can cure yourself of anything. That's not what I'm saying. What I am saying is that you're going to stack the deck in your favor for the reasons that you'll understand here in a little while. And so I remember reading the book, and I went out in her town, a little town called Ridgecrest. And those of you that are over the age of 40 remember VCRs and video stores. So I bought a VCR, and I rented a few videos that were comedies. And I remember one of them was the movie. It was fairly new at the time. It was a movie called Money Pit. Money Pit by Tom Hanks. It's a really funny movie, and there's one scene in there where Tom Hanks he does an epic laughter scene that he just can't stop laughing. So I came back about maybe an hour and a half later, and I came in there and I hooked the VCR up to the television, and this is before flat screens, and you had this big old machine that plug these big cassettes in there, and I fast forwarded and found a couple of really funny places, and I waited for my mom to wake up. And when she did wake up, I stroked her and took care of her for a minute. And when she got conscious enough to understand what was going on, I interrupted her pattern. And if you don't know what that is, go back and listen to a couple of other episodes. It just means I startled her in the moment and created a blank spot in her brain. I said, "Okay, Mom, time to wake up. Doctor says you have cancer, but there's only two kinds of cancer. Can surrender and can survive. And we've decided that you're going to survive." And from that point on, I started playing the videos. Now she's cut from the middle of her chest down to the bottom of her stomach, and you need your stomach muscles to laugh. Yeah. And I'm making her laugh. And she's got tubes in her and all this stuff. And it was very difficult, but I made her laugh, and I kept her laughing. In and out of there every day. We'd read joke books and so on and so forth. And yes, I did talk to her about, cleaning up her diet and things like that. That's a whole nother story. But whenever the doctor would come in, I never let him tell her. I'd let him talk to her, and I'd sit there and I'd look at him like, if you do, I'm coming after you. And very long story short, I would even interrupt his pattern. I'd let him talk, and then I go, "Okay, doc, time for you to get the hell out of here. We got stuff to do." And I'd run him out. And we stayed in the hospital probably 2 weeks, I want to say, before they let her out. And I never let him tell that to my mother. And my mother lived another 11 and a half years, cancer-free, by the way, cancer-free. And I share that with you because throughout the whole process, one of the things that was a constant through the whole thing was laughter. Now, we've all heard this saying before, and that is that laughter is the best medicine. And it is an undervalued statement, and it is something that most of us don't take for granted. But I'm here to tell you, and it is the reason why I wrote the book, and I should have grabbed it around so I could flash it in front of you right now. But one of my books is called Get Happy Now. And in it, it's science. And what I'm about to talk to you about is science as well, meaning that there are unbelievable amount of studies, university studies and scientific studies and physiological and physical studies that have been done about the level of happiness as it pertains to your health, and all kinds of other things as well. Happy people are in general healthier. They make more money. They're obviously happier. They go through life more optimistic, and life generally seems to be better for them. You might be saying to yourself, "Well, yeah, okay, well, how can I be happy when I got all this stuff going on?" Well, truth of the matter is happiness, and at the risk of sounding too, rainbows and crystals and all of those things and unicorns, happiness is a choice. That's true. But it's also a physiological thing that you can do and condition yourself to default to that. You've been around me for any length of time, you know that's called neuro-encoding. Encoding or programming yourself to default to your chosen best behavior, your chosen best beliefs, your chosen best emotions, so that you don't have to conjure it up when it's time. It happens to you automatically. It just automatically, you default to that, you snap into that. And so having said that, now, this was 1988, so close to 30 years ago now. Yeah, close to 30 years ago now when that happened. And since then, now I was also fortunate for this. I need to back up for a second. I had two of the greatest parents on the planet as far as I was concerned. And both of them were joyful and happy and joyful and joking around all the time. Now, they didn't have the best diet, quite honestly, and they went through their stuff. And they went through times, and they certainly weren't as joyful as I am and doing the things that I'm saying here right now. But they went through times. My dad was born in 1929, my mom in 1931. And in those times, especially being African American, things weren't so great. We'd never had a lot of money. My dad didn't graduate from high school, so he finished his education while he was raising his family. So he worked a couple jobs, and it was very tough. And they had 4 kids, and I was one of them. And I'm going to tell you, I was a handful. So they had a lot of stress going on in their lives, but they were always very optimistic. You know, when I look back on them and I compare them to a lot of people nowadays, and I look at the level of joy that they had, it was remarkable. It really was. So that rubbed off on me. And my father, especially, he was the kind of person that would laugh so hard that tears would roll out of his eyes. And that would make us laugh. And, we'd have these big laughing sessions. And my family in general, we were a pretty healthy family. And I was too, until I got out on my own. And I started eating even crappier food, McDonald's and all that stuff and everything. And I started to allow myself to succumb to the woes of the world, when you become 18 years old and you start to have to pay your own bills and things like that. And I wasn't as happy for, quite a long period of time. And some of you know my history, that some things happened to me that caused me to go the other direction. And so, having said that, my parents at least instilled that in us, to be optimistic. And optimistic, again, does not just mean every cloud has a silver lining or the glass is half full. Optimistic means options. Options, and by the way, we all have infinitely more better options than we have bad options. When something happens, most of us go pessimistic. Oh, now look at it. Now my day is ruined and all this stuff. Instead of going, okay, great. Here's the options that I have. I can look at this. I can fix the tire. I can go, okay, well, now it's time to do this. I have other options. And I can look at things differently. And we all have that choice. And when I say choice, we have the choice to do something in that moment to change how we feel in that moment. Said differently, we have the choice to allow ourselves to really even laugh at ourselves or laugh at what's going on. And that seems a little counterintuitive, because when things are bad, the last thing you want to do is laugh. The last thing that you want to do is be joyful. The last thing that you want to do is feel good about something. Most of us feel like I got to grind my way through it. Let me get through this thing. And unfortunately, we are conditioned to behave that way, if you will. And when I say conditioned, I mean, obviously, you're not being conditioned that way by listening and watching to me. But this is one of my pet peeves, if you will. If you look at media, if you look at television, if you look at social media, you look at most things that are going on, the vast majority of it, in my opinion, to the tune of about 80% of what comes across our eyes and ears these days by way of media or even the stuff that we read, more than half of it is doom and gloom, and more than half of it, and again, to me, it's like 80%. If you don't believe me, go look at your Netflix or any of the shows or any of the movies. Just go look at the roster of movies. Now it's Halloween time now, not to date this, but there's so many dramas and so many murder mysteries and so many CSIs and so many horror movies and things like that. And so the more of that we watch, guess what? That conditions us, that affects us, that causes us has a lingering effect on us. And there's nobody on the face of the planet that can tell me that it doesn't. Years ago, especially being a psychologist, as I started to look at the violent video games and everything, and I was watching the fight between the video game makers and that whole industry and them and what was it, the people who, oh gosh, the organizations that censor and those kinds of things. I was watching the fight going on in between there. And, I was just thinking to myself, well, how could you not? I remember watching a game where, for little kids, and they hadn't had the age restrictions on them yet, but little kids would play this game. And the game was, it was like a combat game. And at the end, the winner would would take the enemy or the one that he won and tear them apart, pull their spine out and do all those things. And I'm getting off a little bit of a tangent, but what I'm saying is that kind of input and that kind of influence causes people to be a certain way. I don't care what anybody says. So that's just my personal opinion, and I'm sticking by it, that your input that comes from the outside definitely is going to have a difference on your own happiness. And now I'm going to take a break here in a minute, but and when I come back, I'm going to talk to you about why it's so important and why laughter actually sets you up to be healthier. Why obviously we say that it's a no-brainer to think that, well, laughter sets us up to be happy, yeah, in the moment, but laughter sets us up to be healthy as well. So I'll be right back in just a short moment. When I do, again, keep your pad and paper, because I'm not only going to just share with you what it means, why you're going to do this, but I'm going to give you something that you can do to, as I always say, condition yourself so you default to whatever your chosen behavior and belief is. I'll be right back. Hey, what's good? It's me, Joseph McClendon III, and let me get real with you just for a second. Now, you've probably heard me talk about this before, something that I call the thieves of our dreams. Procrastination, hesitation, fear of failure, fear of success, self-doubt, self-loathing, imposter syndrome, and fear of rejection. Well, let me ask you a question. What if you could not only retrain your brain and your nervous system to automatically default to your absolute best thoughts, emotions, and behaviors, but you could also do the same for others that are going through difficult times and challenges in their own lives and things that are stopping them from creating the life of their desires? Well, this is what I call neuroencoding. And at the risk of sounding arrogant, these are the same tools, methods, and strategies in neuroscience that I've used to operate in the upper 5% of all of my own businesses, especially as a coach, a speaker, and a presenter for the last 30 plus years. The Neuroencoding Institute provides you with the knowledge, the tools, and unmatched support to become a certified neuroencoding specialist and guide you to the life of wealthiness. And remember, wealthy means to be healthy, happy, and financially abundant. Go to neuroencoding.com to speak to an enrollment specialist today, and I look forward to serving you at the highest level.
You're enjoying this episode on Angel Phoenix Productions Podcast Network. To explore a complete lineup of quality programs and media production services, head on over to angelphoenix.com or like our Facebook page at facebook.com/Angel Phoenix Productions.
Well, welcome back. As promised, I'm going to share with you why laughter is so important and so powerful for your own health, and why laughter is also so important with regard to your happiness, those two things. Like I said, it's a no-brainer that if you're laughing, then you're happy in that moment. But the trick is that you want to be this far, a millimeter away a fraction of a second away from a smile and laughter, not some of the time, not most of the time, all of the time. And what I mean by that is that when something happens in our lives, we go into one or two parts of our brains. When anything happens, good or bad, we have a choice in that moment. And that choice is when I say choice, we have a choice to respond. Now, there's a difference between responding and reacting. Reacting is without thought. A knee-jerk reaction. The physician hits you in the knee with that rubber mallet, and you don't think, your leg just shoots up. That's a reaction. But a response is you got to, even if it's just a second, to think about something, the choice of which way to go. And the choice is always, what does this mean and what am I going to do about it? That's what happens very, very quickly inside of us. But here's what happens. When we default, or when we move into what's called our parasympathetic nervous system, our brain releases chemicals, or more specifically, hormones, if you will. When we go into our sympathetic nervous system, which, by the way, is fight or flight, it releases a different set of hormones. Now, you've heard me talk about this before. When you're in that sympathetic nervous system, fight or flight, we release cortisol, which is the stress hormone. We release adrenaline. And we release, and by the way, in combination, depending on how severe that input is, how severe that stress is. And what happens is, in that moment, our body is flooded with that stuff. Now, when it's flooded with those like the cortisol and the things that when we're in our fight or flight mode, That stuff is very corrosive to our nervous system, to our entire system, and it also causes us to narrow down our choices. It's fight or flight. It's get the hell out of there or put up a fight. That's it. Those are your own choices. That's not optimism, if you will. But when we are triggered and we become happy, our body also releases chemicals when we go into our parasympathetic nervous system. And some of those hormones and chemicals are things like, especially dopamine. You've heard me talk about that so many times before. Dopamine is the euphoric hormone that makes you feel good and makes you feel optimistic, makes you feel just great. It's almost like a drug. You're on a high. At its severest, by the way. It'll also release oxytocin, which is love. It'll also release endorphins, which is another chemical, or shall I say, a hormone that makes you feel good. Now, the combination of those, that's called happy, ladies and gentlemen, the combination of them. And they're varying levels of that. You can be so happy that you're laughing like my father and tears rolling out of your eyes, or you can just be going with a little chuckle or something like that. Either way, you're optimistic. You have options in that moment. So the trick is to do just that. Trick our brain to consistently dump that combination of hormones into our system as much as possible. Why? Because that which we do the most is not only what we'll do the best at, we'll get the best at, but it is the thing that'll happen automatically. Said differently, anything that is repeated will become a habit. But check this out. Any habit that is reinforced or praised will become automatic. Automatic. And let me give you a real simple example. When you were little and you learned how to tie your shoes, okay? You struggled, and when you struggled, you finally got it right at some point. And either somebody around you went, good boy, good girl, that's awesome, great job. And you went, good boy, good girl, great job. If you're looking at me, eyebrows up, and you went, and you gave yourself some sort of pleasure, you gave yourself some sort of praise. And when you did, guess what? You're in your parasympathetic nervous system, dopamine, oxytocin, and by the way, there is a little bit of adrenaline that goes along in there as well. But that mixture of things and the mixture of chemicals and things that are going on in your body make you feel good, which makes your brain always go, what just happened? That I feel good. What happened right before I feel good? Oh, I was successful at tying my shoes. And what made it do? And we learned, we grew from there. Now, having said all of that, here's the trick. The trick is to find a way that you are as often as possible laughing out loud. If I was to make a shortcut to say all of this stuff, you want to be healthier, find a way that at least once a day, you are laughing out loud. Now, that doesn't mean go and watch your sitcoms or anything like that. Find something that makes you laugh out loud. We've all had them. And sometimes we can just remember. I'm very, very fortunate. I've got great friends that send me funny memes and funny videos and things like that all the time. And as a matter of fact, we're going to put it in the description. And I've been watching this one for the last couple of days. Now, everybody has their own different kind of humor. But this one makes me laugh out loud. And I realize that I've turned into my father. This one has literally made tears roll out of my eyes. And it's a video that we'll put it in the description here so you can watch it on your own. And this is just my kind of humor. And it is a little baby sitting in his high chair. And the father walks in. And the caption of the video is, it's like a TikTok video. It's only like 15 seconds long. The father walks in and the baby, or I don't know, a man walks in and the baby looks at the father, and the level of horror on the child's face, and it turns around and is just mortified. Now that's not funny, but what's funny is that there is a caption above it, and it says, when you realize that you've just been reincarnated into the same broke-ass family as you were before. And the soundtrack is there's somebody else laughing. And it is just, that to me, that is funny. And I watch it and it just makes me laugh out loud. And so guess what? Because that one makes me laugh out loud and I've watched it so many times, then guess what I'm teaching myself? It doesn't mean that I have to remember that specific thing. It's just that because I've done it so much, and I've done it so much now for the past 30 plus years, that's my default, that's what I go to. Now, by the way, just so you know, when we laugh, we have to breathe diaphragmically. We get more oxygen in our systems. When we laugh, our system says, everything is great, you guys, to all of our cells, all of our immune system, all of our organs, everything is great. So keep going, doing what you need to do, fight, do whatever it needs to do. So what happens inside of our system, our entire system, is our cells are happy. Every cell of our nervous system, every cell of our brain, every cell of our organs, and all of those things, our immune system, are happy. Now, a lot of people feel like this. Well, wait a minute, I've got to work towards getting health. The answer is, yeah, you got to eat right. You got to do all those things, but aid and assist yourself through laughter. Give yourself all of those things, all the chemicals that I was talking about, so that your body goes, it's okay. Listen, because when people ask me all the time, which was part of the impetus or the reason why I did this podcast today, it's because people keep asking me, Joseph, what are you doing? What are you doing that you're so energetic, that you look so young, that you feel so young, that you act so young? And this is it. This is it, is that anybody that's been around me, I'm laughing all the time, all the time. There's something that happens, and I'll give you an example. We did a seminar over the weekend, and on day number 1, my air conditioner broke in my house, and I was sweating like a pig through the whole thing. So when it was over, I got on the phone and called up the air conditioning company. They came out, $7,000, because I had to replace the whole unit. $7,000. And when it was over and I paid the guy and he walked out, I busted up laughing. And the reason I was laughing was because it was so ironic to me that here, and I know this sounds silly, 24 hours before, I was $7,000 richer. Now I'm $7,000 poorer. And to me, that was just funny. Now, some of you are saying, how could that possibly be funny? Well, it was funny because I made it funny. It was funny because I have been doing this for so long. That's my default. Now, does that mean I'm not serious about things? Absolutely not. Does that mean that I don't take things seriously and have to deal with the hard things in life? Absolutely not. I have to deal with those things just like everybody else. But the truth of the matter is, because I have a default there, I'm healthier, I'm happier. And again, when I have to deal with something, I'm more optimistic. I have more options to choose from than most people. And here's the greatest part about it. And hopefully you'll take this with you away from the take away this with you. And that is this, that if you choose to, you have the ability to do that as well, if that's what you want. And I guarantee you, this is the option that you would want to have, rather than to live in misery or depression and all of those things. It is unbelievably simple. Your level of happiness definitely affects your level of health. Your level of happiness definitely affects everything else around you. And the easiest way to get there is to laugh a lot, ladies and gentlemen. Laugh a lot. Find a way to laugh a lot. And as always, remember, life is always exactly what you dare to make it, and fortune favors the bold. I wish you boldness, I wish you happiness, and I will see you at the top.
This podcast was a production of Angel Phoenix Productions. Explore more episodes of this show or other great shows on the Angel Phoenix Podcast Network by visiting angelphoenix.com. The views expressed in this show do not necessarily represent those of Angel Phoenix Productions or its advertisers, and may contain language that's unsuitable for younger listeners.